So I told you that the Cape Pillar walk could be done in a day, and it turns out that it can be.
Well, it can be if you don't want to walk for the next 2 or 3 days afterwards. If you want to have bandages wrapped around your feet for the next few days and basically your knees not bend in the middle, it is possible.
I don't know what you're talking about because it was fine for me. It was a bit long. I mean, 11 hours of walking through wilderness can be a bit challenging, but I think we did pretty well.
No, I think we did pretty well too, but I don't think I'd ever want to do that again. I think 32 kilometres in one day across some of those nice little uphills and stairs and things that we did is a little bit too much.
Yeah, but when you're short on time and you're only in Tasmania for a few days, you really have to make the most of it. So I'm very glad that I got to see Cape Pillar and walk for that long.
Yeah, no, and I think the guys that we actually asked for the advice about whether it can possibly be done have maybe got a bit of a newfound respect for us. Newfound respect, or they just think we're stupid. Either way.
Yeah, either way.
Either way.
I think that's the thing, though. Everything that we're reading was saying that it was a 2 to 3 day walk and not to do it. But I'm happy to have just gone out there, given it my best shot and done it.
Yep, and now I've got to wear shoes on these feet that are covered in blisters for the next 8 days, basically, which is going to be really, really fun.
Well, now the overland track won't seem so bad. Since you've done this huge walk, each day in the overland will seem like a breeze.
Well, it's either not going to feel bad or I'm just going to collapse halfway.
But that was an amazing walk, and the scenery on that walk and just walking along those Dolomite cliffs and seeing Tasman Island was just
What phenomenal. Did you just say? Did you say Dolomite?
Was it Dolomite? What are
they? No, that's a savings account, mate. Like that's the old Commonwealth Bank savings account. What
are they called then?
These are Dolorite cliffs.
Dolorite.
Yeah.
But Google Dolomite and they come up.
No, Google's wrong. They're Dolorite.
Dolorite or Dolomite, either way.
I think I've probably still got about $20 in my Dolomite savings account.
Well, after this many years, the interest must have boosted it quite a bit.
I should go and check, actually. But yeah, the sea cliffs there are pretty cool. 300 metres high at Cape Pillar, overlooking Tasman Island. That's pretty awesome sight there. And I think anybody who does the 3 Capes track is pretty lucky. And the fact they get to do it over 4 days rather than doing it in the one day that we basically did.
And you got to see it from air as well on a helicopter, which I've seen your photos and it looks amazing from the air as well.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. Beautiful coastline there. So awesome part of Tasmania. We've picked our F-Stoppers prize winner on Instagram.
Yeah, we had a lot of good entries there, but this one definitely stood out. As soon as it came up, it was one of the contenders, and as we watched every other entry come in, it still just stood out as being the best one.
Definitely. There were so many good ones. This was actually really, really, really hard to choose. It's a picture of the Opera House, which has been flipped and mirrored, but it's actually been flipped and mirrored in a really good way. I think there's a lot of effort been put into actually doing this. And so Daniel J. Humphreys with an underscore on the end, congratulations on the F-Stoppers prize for a tutorial of your choice. I'm fairly sure you're going to get quite a bit out of this. This is a pretty awesome prize, and massive thank you to fstoppers.com for offering it. We'd like to thank Nisi Australia again for coming on board this week. Actually, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to do this, as well as our overall show sponsor. But we're going to be offering another Nisi V5 holder kit to one lucky listener again, this particular prize. So we'll be drawing it on the 27th of November 2016 at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So same as always, we're looking for one of our favourite images that have been submitted to the Project RAWcast hashtag on Instagram, as well as very clearly mentioning us within the caption of the post, not in the comments, but within the caption itself. So for the next 2 weeks, basically, we'll be taking submissions for that. And a massive thank you again for Nisi for coming on board with that prize, as well as the show sponsorship that they have with us, which again, ongoing. All of our listeners get a 5% discount at nisifilters.com.au by using the coupon code Project RAWcast during any purchase. This is a purchase for anything, any value, 5% off. So massive thank you to Nisi for the ongoing support of Project RAWcast.
Keep wanting to see your images coming into the Project RAWcast hashtag. It's a great filter kit to get started with, especially with the polarizer. If you're wondering whether you even want this kit, I was using it on the Cape Pillar track, and it was so good just to be able to put it on the front of the camera, use the polarizer, and still know that I could put filters in front of that. It's a great product, and so you can either enter our competition to win one, or if you don't win one, you can go onto nisifilters.com.au and get 5% off by using the coupon code Project RAWcast.
Yes, and thank you to Nisi, as always, for your ongoing support. Now, Kieran.
Yes?
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Do you believe in the rules of photography? Do you have any rules of photography yourself? Do you believe in them, and do you believe there are any rules that we should abide by when we pick our camera up and photograph something?
Well, I think there's many rules that have come out just from so many photos being taken. There tends to be some things that work, some things that don't work, and these things that work tend to get the name of rules. And I suppose one that really stands out is that everyone knows is the rule of thirds, which is aligning certain things to a third from either one side or the other in your image, or putting your horizon saying a third of your sky, and then 2/3 of your foreground. And even cameras even have little grid lines that you can align things to, just to make it easier. There's so many people who say to use the rule of thirds, it makes images look better, but any rules or anything are there to be broken. So I guess they're kind of more like guides than rules.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the rules of third as well, I've looked, and kind of my analytical mind maybe worked a little bit overtime here. But like the rule of thirds, I believe there's also a rule of thirds in depth as well. So not just a rule of thirds in a two-dimensional form where you put a grid over the top, but also a rule of thirds in depth. So placing objects within your composition a third of the way and 2/3 of the way into your frame. Have you ever heard of that, or ever seen that, or ever thought about it that hard?
That's probably too much thought, yeah. For me, I don't know, I tend to just go with what looks good, but if I have a look at some of my images, I'll probably notice that I've got something in the foreground filling a third, and then another thing for another third, and then some sky or something. But
I reckon you should have a look at your pictures, because I bet you that's a rule as well. And if it's not, it'll help you improve your photography. You'll definitely get a good image as well if you try this. So I actually think a rule of thirds in depth as well. Again, it's a rule. It's not. Sorry, it's a compositional thing. It's not necessarily a rule, but I actually look at it like that as well. Not just across your frame, but also depth into the image as well.
I guess we've already talked about another rule in previous episode, and that was not to blow out highlights as well. And we've both mentioned our thoughts on this particular topic.
I mentioned my thoughts, and you just let me get shot. I'm a firm believer of this one myself. Again, it's not a rule, and obviously there's some great and very successful photographers out there who do it really well, but I believe getting your sky and foreground in balance is something that people should at least attempt when they first pick up a camera.
I do like your wording then. Some very good and successful photographers. You didn't say they were good and fantastic photos, but you said they were successful photographers.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
What about putting things in the center of an image?
Well, again, being a rule or a guideline, it's something that if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, which is, I don't know, a bit vague, but it kind of follows on from the rule of thirds. And for instance, a landscape shot, having a particular subject right in the center can mean the image is a little unbalanced, but it depends on whether you're going for something that has symmetry or it just really focuses on that particular subject. You don't have to throw it off to one side or the other just to fit the rule of thirds, but sometimes having it in the center does just really draw attention to it.
I think if you're actually, say, if you were photographing the Eiffel Tower, for example, like that is your subject. So you're really actually probably focusing on the Eiffel Tower, and that's what you're trying to do. But if you're looking at a broader landscape and, say, stepping back and trying to get city buildings and the nice roads and everything in the middle, then it might be a different story altogether.
As you're saying, the Eiffel Tower, any shot you really see of just the Eiffel Tower, it's in the center because it works quite well. It's a symmetrical structure, things like pier shots as well. I think where this rule does really work well is when photographing a person, and having a person just dead center can be a bit odd. I don't know, there's just something visually about it that doesn't seem to work all that well.
Yeah. Cool. What about horizon lines?
Again, keeping horizon in the middle is, it can look a bit odd, especially if you've got just a blank sky or a sky with clouds in it. Just having your horizon right in the middle doesn't work too well. But if you've got your horizon in the middle for a cityscape where it's reflecting on water, having that balance between the reflection and the city works really well if your horizon's dead center. And this will also keep the lines of the building straight up and down as well.
So like a horizon line could be part of your rules of third. Rather than putting it into the middle, you put it on the bottom third or the top third.
Yeah, and again, it depends on your subject, whether you've got an interesting sky or an interesting foreground.
Yeah, definitely. And negative space. I'm a fan of negative space, so particularly with drone shots. What about you? What do you think of it?
I think for negative space, it can work well to draw your eye to a particular subject. I think where you should avoid negative space is in things like clear blue skies where there's not much going on. If you fill up half your image with clear blue sky, then it doesn't do anything for the image, and it's just wasted space that could be filled up with something a bit more interesting.
It's funny though, because we obviously focus on landscape photography, but if you think about food photography, negative space is a huge thing. It's a very modern plating style, and you look at traditional food photography these days, there's so much negative space, particularly within like flat lay type shots. Obviously, we focus on landscape photography a lot of our discussions, but it's not the only type of photography.
Well, negative space in terms of portraits as well. You fill in the frame with your subject, rather than having so much, like a lot of gap around their shoulders or the head, and just really cropping quite tight to your subject works, in most cases, does work a lot better than having a lot of negative space in the image.
Yeah, and so with drone shots, for me, I actually really like the negative space side of it, where with top-down shots in particular, say you've got a little boat in the shot, but you've got showing the massive expanse of the ocean, or those types of things. I personally think they work really well. Obviously, this is not a rule. These are guides that people follow, but for me, avoiding negative space would definitely depend on what type of photography you're doing.
As you were saying, for the drone shots, it does, and having like a little boat, it does give it a good sense of scale as well by having all that negative space.
Exactly. Yeah. So, filling your frame is another good one. I think that you kind of traditionally taught that you really want to kind of fill the frame of your camera. Fill the frame of your scene when you're shooting the shots. Not really having too much space around, but also maximising the use of the sensor size and the everything else. Yeah,
you've only got a limited amount of space in any photo if you're not, I guess, stitching images or lots of images together. So making the most out of that and just showing what's important, because it's easy to stand somewhere and see a whole scene and really take it in and enjoy it. But when it comes to a photo, the more you step back from a scene, the smaller subjects are going to be. So if you can really focus on what's important and fill the shot with that, it'll be a higher impact image.
Yeah, definitely. I think something else that when you're looking through a camera as well, is you don't necessarily notice some of the smaller things that are in your shot. There's some things that are in the background of your image.
Yeah, I think this definitely comes into play when shooting portraits or anything really, is seeing what is behind your subject and making sure that there's no trees coming out of someone's head from the background. Or I've seen some interesting shots with a wedding photographer who deliberately took shots so everyone had these antlers that were up on the wall in the background. He'd line them up so everyone had these things coming out of their heads. It was quite funny to do that constantly, but when you're not wanting something like that, you might not notice it when you're just taking a photo and focusing on the person. But
hopefully the bride is actually wanting that.
Well,
in her photo shoot.
I think the story went that the photographer was an ex-boyfriend who was asked to do the photography of his ex-girlfriend's wedding. So I think that was just like a little bit of a payback or a bit of fun he was having with it.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully their relationship mends soon. So the thing with photography, there's so many what you would call rules, and these aren't necessarily rules that you have to follow, but in a technical sense, when you're analysing images, you probably find a lot of those things. The rules of thirds, not blowing out your highlights, not centering your subject, not having your horizon across the middle of the shot, avoiding negative space, filling your frame, and ensuring that your background doesn't have unwanted objects in it. Those types of things are things that any photographer would start off thinking about, I think. And once you obviously evolve your own techniques and your own ability, they are rules that are meant to be broken in many cases.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear what our listeners have to say on these subjects as well, and whether they follow those rules or whether they have any other rules that we haven't mentioned, or if, they deliberately go out to break those rules and try and get something a bit different.
Photography is a creative art, so as much as there might be guides to specific types of things that you would do when you first pick up a camera and start learning, those things don't necessarily need to carry on your entire photographic career or with every image that you're going to take. So, but they are obviously things to think about when you are starting out, and things to kind of consider before you develop your own style and your own ability. So,
cool.
Sweet. My feet are still hurting. My blisters on my feet.
They're still hurting. Did you get?
Yeah.
Did you get those blister packs?
No, because I haven't really needed to wear shoes since Friday. Now I'm just thinking about needing to put them on at 6:30 tomorrow morning and needing to go on to the next 8 days straight. So, it's going to be fun.
Well, my wife ended up getting a couple of blisters as well, and she can highly recommend the blister packs. They seem to do her quite well when we went out and climbed a mountain the next day.
That's awesome. She had lots of water on our walk as well, didn't she?
That's right. You were a little upset that we abandoned you and took all the water with us just to try and get back to the car.
I was dehydrating along the track. My body was breaking down. I've passed out. Nobody noticed. No, that's not true. It's not true. So we've got a really interesting question here, and this is something that is a very valid topic, and I think something that not many of us now consider in the way that this particular person does. Now, Nick Monk Photography. Now, Nick is an incredible photographer here in Tasmania, has such a naturally gifted ability within his imagery. I whenever I see his images blown up, they are amazing. Now, Nick's also a very passionate conservationist, if you like, very passionately supports looking after nature and looking after everything around us. Now, his question for us is: Instagram and Facebook are causing popularity explosions at sensitive places with the flow-on effect of environmental degradation at those places. Can you please discuss this? We would love to discuss this one, Nick, because I think my photography is very much focused on tourism. So I have built my business off the fact that I encourage people to get outdoors and visit a lot of the places that we visit. But I'm also highly, highly aware of some of the sensitivity around the fact that social media has made the world a far, far smaller place. It's also brought attention to places that you may never have ever heard of prior to looking through your Instagram feed, through your Facebook feed. This is a good one, and I think any photographer or any social media user with such a large audience could potentially benefit from being aware of these types of things. I mean, you and I just last week, Kieran, were talking about, we just did a 32-kilometer walk in one day, which we do not recommend people doing. Do we now go and post on Instagram and show off and say it is possible to do it? Our answer is obviously no, because we don't recommend doing it. So there's so many things to think about when you do have an audience, I think, about some of the places you visit, the way you visit them, the way you do things, that you could potentially be encouraging people to do so. And I think Instagram and Facebook has definitely made the world such a smaller place in terms of the ability of knowledge of environmentally sensitive areas. And I think it's something that every photographer should be aware of when they're doing this.
Well, again, it comes down to the onus is on the person actually visiting the site, and if it's a bit hard to control a huge influx of people if a particular area does become popular with social media. But again, you can't really, I don't think you could ever blame a photographer that sort of started a trend or anything to go to these places. It does come down to the people visiting those sites to take care and be aware of any particular rules or restrictions around those places. I know that, as you know as well, there's restrictions on drone flying around Tasmanian national parks, and people who are just coming to see these sites may not know that, and it's important to be aware of different areas and what you can and can't do.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. A perfect example of some of these places just here in Australia and some more well-known places, it would be the Figure of Eight pools in the Royal National Park in New South Wales, and also Wedding Cake Rock. So these sort of places, prior to, I suppose, the explosion of Instagram, were probably not as highly trafficked as they are now. Where there are actually reports out there, and there's news stories around this, where national parks or New South Wales national parks are actually complaining about the number of people now that are making these 5-hour walks in to visit places unprepared, but also causing degradation of the paths and the tracks that lead to it. Now, we've had examples of the Figure of Eight pools where people have actually been swept off the rocks because they simply weren't aware of the conditions of the waves and the tidal flow and the water, all those types of things, the swell. They got swept off the rock, and helicopters needed to be called in because they had to be airlifted out because they were injured. In many ways, I mean, photography and social media has made the world such a smaller place, and those types of things are happening all over the world. Unfortunately, there's nothing that is going to prevent this from happening. So I think there's got to potentially be government mandates to protect or at least fund the development of these types of things. Again, another example, Secret Falls here in Tasmania. Mate, it's not a secret. It's never been a secret. The only reason people want to see it is because it's called Secret Falls.
And it looks pretty in photos.
No, it absolutely does. It does. But the path leading down into Secret Falls has become... I live literally 5 minutes from there. I've been visiting this place now for nearly 7 years. I go in there, and I'm pretty sure I pointed it out to you when we visited last time that path was not there, and that path was not there when I first moved here. Unfortunately, what can you do about it? I don't know what you can really do. I think the better option, and the option here, would be for the state governments around the place to kind of fund better paths into these places, possibly, rather than allowing for environmental degradation to happen as a result of all of the foot traffic that happens.
Well, these places people want to see because they do look nice, but in the grand scheme of things, a muddy path that's trodden into a particular area, it's not going to have a huge impact on the environment as a whole. And yeah, it might make a particular area a little less natural because it is highly trafficked by humans who walk in there and create their own large paths, but it's not going to affect the environment if you go 5 meters into the bush, it's still going to look like bush, and you're not going to know where the path is from there.
Yeah, definitely. But again, when you take the example of the Royal National Park in New South Wales, the 5-hour walk that apparently now, I mean, the paths in there are very, very well trodden as compared to what they used to be. It's the foot traffic that is causing that. And I'm not pro either side, really, because I believe social media is a great use of inspiration to get people out and about and to actually see the world. But I do agree with you as well that it's up to the individual people that go in there after seeing an image and after going and copying other photographers who've been into these places to actually be careful themselves and to kind of be aware of the environment. I think, again, there could potentially be some stuff that governments around, state governments in Australia in particular, could create awareness around this exact fact that, they're not boardwalked paths that are walking in, and maybe some form of signage to make people more aware of their surroundings, or at least attempt to make people more aware of their surroundings and not putting themselves in dangerous positions, as well as not causing any more damage to places. You're never going to stop this from happening, but I do also agree and know Nick's personal opinion about this and fully respect that as well, that there is another side to that argument. So,
and the more popular a place becomes, the wider the track becomes, I suppose, until it gets to a point where they do build a boardwalk or something. And the better, or the more clear a path is, the more people follow that particular path and are less likely to go off that path and out into other areas where they shouldn't be. And keeping a boardwalk is a great way to keep people on a particular path. It may change the look of a particular location, but in the end, a bigger path means better protection for the rest of the area.
Definitely. I think you and I have discussed this in a previous episode as well, though, that a lot of the times now we've got a social media circuit, which is a well-trodden path, and to get unique shots of these locations, you have to get off the beaten path. So in many ways, we've got, people with 40, 50, 60, 100, 200,000 followers potentially out there who are going out with the specific purpose of trying to create unique content in these locations. People will copy them as well. So if they get off the beaten path themselves, it's going to lead to others to doing that as well. So as much as there is a beaten path to many of these places, you've also got that flow-on effect of having foot traffic in places where people shouldn't necessarily be, or at least maybe not be thinking about the effect and impact they're having in those places as well.
Yeah, and again, it does come down to the person to know what effect they're going to have on that particular location.
Absolutely. And I'm firm believer in both sides there. I think there should be some awareness created about the impact that social media is causing on the environment, but at the same time, it's also encouraging people to get outdoors and to see the world. So you've got that twofold effect of on both sides, really. You've got positives and you've got negatives. I'm a firm believer that people should get out and experience the world, and I'm going to continue sharing my vision of the world when I do explore places. But at the same time, there are things that we could do potentially to create awareness and use our audience base for that as well.
We'll put up some links as well for people to go and check out where people have had an effect on the environment by trying to get something different, or just being completely unaware of how the path that they've taken will impact the environment.
For sure. And look, another example of this recently, and this is mainstream news, is 2 idiots jumping on the back of a giant sea turtle at Fraser Island. There is no excuse for this. This is just stupidity. I don't care who you are, whether the animal is dead, whether it's alive. Publishing that sort of stuff online is just wrong. And so that in itself, and unfortunately this photo and these photos have gone worldwide and mainstream, and these guys could potentially face a rather large fine because of it. But that's the type of stuff that's just absolute stupidity, when you've got photographers who are out there really genuinely caring about the landscape and respecting their surroundings and doing that, they just want to get a pretty picture. I think that's a different story, and that's where it's up to the individual to really just be aware of what they're doing.
That's a stupid twofold. One for actually doing it, and two for thinking that they'll get away with posting it and looking like they're actually cool or anything.
Yeah, no, as far as I'm concerned, those guys there should get triple to quadruple fine, not $20,000. I reckon the only way to prevent that sort of thing is just going and ensuring that nobody else ever does it again in future, and coming down hard on them, because no matter what, that was just stupid. But when you just want to get out there and kind of get off the beaten path and explore a little bit, that's a whole different story altogether, and that's where common sense kind of comes into play. But again, at the same time, I mean, if you are an influencer in terms of your social media audience, being aware of that in the first place, that yes, okay, if I go and post this pretty picture today and it's awesome and it gets traction, and accounts like Beautiful Destinations and Earth Pics with a C and Earth Pics with an X and tourism accounts pick it up and repost it, people will copy you. It's as simple as that. People will go out there and try to do the same thing.
Yeah, we've had some, I guess, similar things here in Victoria. One place that was quite popular was Trentham Falls, when that had a bit more water flowing over, so it was an amazing waterfall to go and see. And because it was starting to get shown on Instagram and other social media sites, it got a lot of popularity and a lot of people were going there. And all the shots that you see from there are from off the main viewing platform, or where it says like stay on the path, and people are going off that path, heading down to actually get these shots that they've seen.
Yep.
And
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this year, I've never heard of Trentham Falls until this year. So obviously all the heavy rainflow that came through Victoria and Tasmania this year, as soon as I saw it, I'd never heard of it. So one of the very first things I did when I planned a 2-week trip over to Victoria recently was I put Trentham Falls on my list of things to do and made sure I got there. But I also walked in there and I saw signs that very clearly said, this track is closed. And it was closed for a reason, and it is quite a hairy track. I mean, it's not hard to get down. I mean, I did myself. It's, I'm one of those ones who did get down and take pictures of off the beaten track. But yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. I got influenced to go there by some of the images that I saw, and then I posted some images of this place.
I don't think it's a necessarily a bad thing, though. When I went there was a path there. I didn't have to bush bash or trample things. It was a thin, narrow, muddy path, but it was still a path that I could follow to get down there without causing any extra damage to the environment that was there. And that,
no, absolutely.
And
yeah,
I mean, before the boardwalks were built there, I'm sure that was just a normal thing to walk down and walk right down to the bottom where the river is and just hang out at the bottom of the falls.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, some of the best pictures are from people standing right on the rock, right in the very front of that waterfall, to give a sense of scale of the waterfall itself. I actually slipped there myself. I fell over. My mate, Lego Jacker, who was there with me at the time, he basically had to kind of come and help me, because I actually slipped over and fell and carved my leg up in there, because the track was actually quite slippery and dangerous.
I think there's a couple of different sort of views on it, whether you're looking at the impact to the environment or whether you're looking at the impact to a person's safety.
Yeah, for sure. I think all of those things are something to possibly need to be considered if you do have a large scale audience and you are going to places where again, like I say, there's two sides to that story. I'm a firm believer in both. So I understand Nick's discussion and I understand his very, very solid point of view. I also am one of those guys who do promote tourism and go out there and try to get that unique content. And so it is one of those things that is in the back of my mind. Another example is a waterfall here called Featherston Falls in Hobart. Not many shots from there at all, at least not until myself and another mate went in, and then we started seeing them popping up all over the place, and there was no beaten path into this waterfall. I haven't been back since I've posted images, and I also have only posted one image, knowing full well that if I keep posting more, there's potentially an impact there of a lot of people going into this place. Now, I fell over, again, getting into this waterfall, and had a pointy stick stabbed straight up through my pants and almost stabbed me where I really didn't want to be stabbed because it's actually quite dangerous, like getting down into the stream itself and crawling around when the water's flowing and when it's actually worthwhile getting in there. So I was looking at it thinking, if a lot of people come in here sometime, somebody's going to get hurt, and I've actually just restrained from posting any more images from there, knowing full well that it's 5 minutes from another major waterfall and we could potentially lead quite a few other people to go in there, cause a degradation, and at the same time potentially injure themselves on the way.
People discover new and beautiful places, and other people want to see them, and it's just progress as well, and just got to try and keep the impact to be at a minimal.
Yep, no, definitely. And I think it's up to every individual to do so. But at the same time, when places start becoming popular and when there's a lot of traffic starting to flow into them as a result of social media, which you are not going to stop, it's simple as that, I also think that there are some things that the state governments around Australia could potentially do to help ensure and minimise the impact on those things, and it just comes down to funding. When tourism traffic starts flowing into places, there's a lot of a flow-on effect of financial benefit all over the place. So there's so many factors there that, to consider within potentially harnessing and protecting that environment, at the same time allowing people to go in to them as well.
I think the lesson here is, even though you can do the Cape Pillar walk in a day, you shouldn't.
No,
we have done it, but we did not recommend it. We did it, so you don't have to.
Well, hopefully there's no buses turning up at 2 p.m. in the afternoon at Fortescue Bay next week, thinking that you can do it in a day, because
it's an 11-hour walk, and it's not nice. Oh, it's a nice walk.
No,
do it. Yeah, by all means, go there and allocate the appropriate amount of time to do it. So 2 or 3 days. But
there's also an awesome track there. You don't need to get off it, really. Just walk on the track.
There's quite a long, winding snake of a boardwalk. Literally a snake of a boardwalk. They've put a head at one end and a tail at the other, and it's beautiful scenery. But
I took my shoes off walking on the boardwalk. It was like literally I walked barefoot on the boardwalk because it was more comfortable than having the shoes rubbing the blisters on my feet constantly. So I mean, that it's a pretty wicked track, and I think that's another perfect example of how the state government can come in and really harness that environment, but at the same time allow for foot traffic to flow through to these incredible parts of the world.
I think we've covered our views on Nick Monk's discussion topic there.
Absolutely. And I, as I say, I know the other side to this. I know Nick Monk's personal opinion about this quite well. And it's a valid thing. And I completely 100% respect his opinion as well. He does have some valid points. Unfortunately, though, no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to prevent that sort of foot traffic once places start getting photographed and they start getting out there in the public.
You can never stop progress.
No, definitely. Thanks for your question, Nick. And thank you for your advice that you've given me for the overland track as well, because yes, you're a great photographer. Awesome. Thank you.
I think we should add for your advice to not do a 32k walk a few days before you do the overland track.
No, don't do that. Look, we got another listener question. We've got a couple more listener questions. I think one here is definitely for you, Kieran. This could be a good one for you. So the bearded photographer on Instagram. So the bearded photographer _ at the end. How does an up-and-coming photographer pick the right workshop, and what makes them qualified to teach? I think this is a really, really cool question. So.
Yeah, we've paraphrased the question there, but I guess it does sum up the main points that we'll talk about, which is if you are wanting to learn more about photography and you go online or you go on social media and you find all these different photographers out there, all saying that they run workshops, all saying that they teach and that you can purchase workshops, purchase tutorials. How do you know whether those photographers are actually going to be good at what they're doing and worth paying the money to be taught by them? I guess what it really comes down to is whether you actually respect that photographer. I
think this is definitely a case where just because you're a good photographer doesn't mean to say you're a good teacher.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, not every photographer can teach well. Even though some people might try, and it can also be a bit of trial and error for some photographers if they're wanting to head out there and find another means of revenue as well. Is a great way is to run workshops, but those photographers need to work out whether what they're teaching is valuable to a particular or to a potential student.
Definitely. I think that they're two different skill sets altogether. I mean, just because you can take a great image and you know how to use your camera doesn't mean to say that you can actually take a backward step and teach that effectively to a beginner. This is like respecting somebody's style of photography is one thing, but also that photographer having the skill set that's required to then break things down systematically from the beginning to the end of the way they are thinking and what they're thinking about when they're doing it is a different skill set altogether.
And that's something that I did before I started running workshops as well, was I had to think about what I could actually teach and how I could teach it and what the steps were to reach that particular end goal as well. It wasn't just like, I'll just run workshops, I'll take people out and teach them things. It's something that was planned from many months in advance to see whether I could actually do this.
Yep, definitely. There are actually, they're not going to necessarily be qualifications, but there are things like the Australian Institute of Professional Photographers. So it's not a qualification. How would you say it's kind of an industry?
It is a qualification in a way. It's an industry certification. Yeah.
Yeah, basically saying that you've proven that you've got the technical skills both as a photographer, but you've also potentially got the business model behind you as a photographer as well. So the Australian Institute of Professional Photography is I'm not going to say it's the only way, but there are ways out there to kind of gauge those types of things. You know, is the person who's teaching you kind of gone to that extent to get certified and to be reviewed by peers? Those types of things could potentially help you make the right selection. I think definitely choosing a photographer who shoots the style of photography that you're looking for. And I'll give you a perfect example here. If you were to come to me, ask me to shoot portrait studio shots with a flash, I'd look at you and just go, mate, you're in the wrong place. Sorry, there's no point in asking me that type of stuff, you know? So not just because you know how to use a camera doesn't mean to say you know and specialize in all types of photography. So kind of knowing what sort of skill sets you want to learn could also help you choose the right photographer to help you learn as well.
Talk to the photographer that you're thinking about it, so don't just go in there and book a workshop, go and meet up with the photographer, send them an email, try and talk to them, say what you're after in a workshop, and see if you can work with them to really cater for what you need. Because they may say that they can't help you out, or they may be able to, but I think contacting the photographer, working out a particular plan for your needs is important as well.
Absolutely. I think that's communicating right from the start about what you want to learn is going to ensure that the actual teacher, the photographer that you're approaching to teach you stuff, actually has those skill sets and the ability to do so as well. Yeah,
because it's like a painter for a house. I mean, there's no particular qualification to paint. Anyone can pick up a paintbrush and paint, but if you're wanting to hire someone to paint your house, there's good painters and there's just cheap painters as well.
I don't think I should paint houses. If you asked me to paint your house white, it would probably end up yellow.
That's very true.
So I mean, look, hopefully we've helped you with that question, the bearded photographer. Really kind of asking the right questions of the photographer, but also ensuring that the photographer actually shoots the style of photography that you want to learn, and maybe just check their reviews. Ask them for an example of somebody that they've worked with in the past. I mean, you'd probably be able to contact that person on Instagram and just say, mate, I'm thinking about using Jim Bob as my workshop to teach me some photography. Is he any good? Those types of things. Just take due care when you're doing so. I mean, a good photography tutor is going to charge you $100 plus an hour to do so. So if that's the type of money you're looking to invest into your skills, just doing a bit of due diligence to ensure that they actually know what they're talking about. So,
all right. And we've got another question from Jonathan Sprigler on Instagram. And he writes to us and says, love the podcast. It's a good start. I like that one. My question is about getting and retaining followers on Instagram. I seem to lose and get new followers every week. I think some are following me for a few days and then dropping. Any advice for avoiding the drops? Also, I'm using hashtags to try and reach new followers. Is it best to use the same hashtags for every post, change a few, or go with all new hashtags every time? Thanks and keep up the good work. I think you could probably answer this one.
Yep. So firstly, welcome to Instagram, Jonathan, because if you're getting people following you and unfollowing you, it is part of the Instagram ecosphere, if you like. Quite often, a lot of them are automated techniques that people are using to generate followers via mass following. So they're following you. And if you don't follow them back after a certain period of time, the automation systems are actually set to unfollow you. Now, this is not always the case, but there is quite a lot of that traffic that happens on Instagram. So we all get it. Unfortunately, it's the case. You go and gain 50 followers, you could potentially lose 25 of them. It's just what happens on Instagram. Now, that there's so many different other ways that this could be happening as well. It's quite simply if you're not producing content that people like, I mean, they may be unfollowing you. That's a possibility as well. But in terms, I mean, you've got to think about this, I think, in marketing terms, if you like. On any marketing platform, with any marketing method, the best way to tell people that you are there is to identify yourself and put yourself in front of them. And that's basically what following does on Instagram. You are creating a notification for that user to say that they've gained a new follower, and you're hoping for them to follow you back. That is that method of doing so. I mean, it's been a part of every major social media platform from day dot. I mean, Twitter was built on this. I mean, the ability to literally just go and follow people and hope for them to follow you back.
The question of follow for follow, it's always around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's hashtags out there. Exactly this hashtag follow for follow, where if you post on that, people will look at that and then follow the people who are posting on that hashtag and hope for you to follow them back. So, unfortunately, that's just part of Instagram. In terms of hashtags, I am a firm believer that you should rotate your use of hashtags. So, using the same block of hashtags for every single post for 2 or 3 years allows your content to be seen on those hashtags constantly. That's great. Rotating your hashtags and using different blocks of hashtags. It doesn't have to be every post, but every second or third post or whatever it is, rotating through your hashtags creates what I like to call a bigger footprint of potential for people to find you. So, an example of this would be, let me think. So if you're using, say, See Australia, Exploring Australia, Australia Shots, Cruising Australia, Australiagram as one set, just let's just say we're only using 6 for now. Use those on one post. Most likely the people who actually look at those hashtags or other people who are using those hashtags may potentially get to see that content. What you would want to do long term would be to rotate your hashtag blocks, use as many possible hashtags that are relevant to the type of content you have, and allow as many possible people around the world to see your content. You're maximizing your exposure potential by using as many hashtags as possible. I see it time and time again, particularly within the Australian landscape market, where we've got guys who are not doing this. I mean, they're using the exact same hashtags. They're mentioning the same accounts potentially just to get their attention. And they're kind of impacting their own potential growth by doing so. Maximizing your footprint by using as many hashtags as you can, but also rotating those hashtag blocks across your posts is going to help you get seen by more people. It also, with the Explore page itself, so the Explore page is based on you seeing content from other people who Instagram believe is relevant to content that you have engaged with. So what you're doing by potentially expanding your hashtag block is also potentially expanding the audience base that you can get from the explore page, which is the recommendations of people seeing your account when they're not following you. So definitely rotating your hashtags there. It's a key thing, I believe, for any Instagrammer. I don't care how big your account is. I don't care how small it is. The mathematics in that formula are very straightforward. And I know yourself, Kieran, you've recently implemented this strategy and it's worked very well for you as well.
I have. I've kind of taken it on, like half on board. I have some that I stick to, and then I'll rotate other ones. And it does help just get my name out there and get my work out there. And when just starting out on Instagram or even just trying to get followers, you will have some that will follow you and then unfollow you. And we've talked about this before about having consistent and good content in order to get and maintain followers as well. Having the hashtags there does help to, as you said, increase your footprint or your reach out into the Instagram world. Changing them I think you should have some that you kind of stick to, but as you say, rotate through a lot of different ones or as many different ones as you can does help get you seen by a lot more people.
Absolutely, and there's the formula behind this is very straightforward, and I'd love to hear anybody argue with this one because I see this time and time again. As soon as this strategy is implemented, you gain more followers and you potentially also increase your overall engagement and reach. I'd also recommend using the maximum amount of hashtags as you can. The more hashtags that you use, the more potential there are to be found and the more potential people there are seeing your content. So you're actually increasing the potential organic reach of every single post by doing so. I also, without getting too technical behind this, if you've got 400 followers, I don't necessarily think a hashtag like beautiful destinations is the right hashtag for you to use. I think, particularly if you're focusing on just a few, using hashtags that really match the size of your account or match the average engagement of your posts helps you to maximize the potential to reach top posts on any given hashtag. Some of the smaller hashtags out there have less traffic on them, which means the top posts rotate far less than they do. But obviously there's less traffic as well, which is the downside of it. But when your account is so small and you start using hashtags like fantastic_earth, hashtag Earth pics with an X on the end, hashtag beautiful destinations, hashtag passion passport, these types of things, hashtags are 1 to 10 million posts on them. So by the time you've posted, there's probably another 300 that have just come in straight over the top of you. So in terms of the chronological order of hashtags, you just get sunk. So you need to kind of think about a strategy behind maximizing the hashtag use also for the size of your audience as well. So using as many hashtags as possible, but also not overreaching and using hashtags that realistically you're either not likely to reach top posts on, or secondly, you may not likely to even be seen by those hubs that repost. Some of the bigger hubs around, you're very, very lucky to ever get featured on them. Your content has to really stand out. And most of the time, as a hub operator myself, I can tell you now the content stands out because it sits in the top posts of any given hashtag. Instagram have done so much algorithmically to kind of change the way all of that works. You can't fake reach. You can't buy post reach. The apps and things that are on the market around the place are you cannot fake your organic post reach. And because top posts now incorporate that organic post reach into it, you can't game the system. It just doesn't kind of work like that. So you need to really think about how the best way to maximize Instagram is, or Instagram as a platform is, and that is to get genuine engagement, genuine post reach, because genuine engagement is what leads to a bigger post reach. if you're doing everything right to get genuine engagement, your post reach increases, your content is going to potentially be surfaced to the right people, which then leads to account growth as well.
And if you're getting followers, have a look at who they are. And if they're following over 4,000 people, there's a good chance that they will unfollow you in a day or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Look, I do not believe in these types of things where you just follow people because they follow you back. I'm a firm believer you follow people whose accounts you like or who inspire you or somebody that you know. So I don't kind of follow people just because they've followed me, and I absolutely flat out refuse to do so. The automated methods that actually allow for that to happen, I mean, it's successful for a lot of people. Business is business. The whole point of Instagram, well, part of the point of Instagram now is a marketing platform. So many people are out there to maximize their reach and to maximize their exposure, and there's a business models behind doing so. So these automated methods of following people is possibly why, Jonathan, you are actually losing a percentage of your followers because you have not followed them back as well. Some will stick. Some will absolutely stick for a long time because they either like your content or whatever. But you will see maybe 50% of the people who do follow you, particularly when your account is smaller. You'll notice it even more. You will see them unfollow you. It's just part of Instagram, unfortunately. And as I say, welcome to Instagram, because we all face that exact thing every day.
And I think using that method is not going to help your account either. I think the best way to actually gain organic and good engagement is to be engaging on Instagram and go through and like people's photos that you like, comment, let them know that it's a good photo, and that's going to get you more good attention towards your feed than just going through liking 1,000 people, then unfollowing the 950 that don't follow you back.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, there's tools out there that do it for you automatically in all regards. So yeah, look, just as far as hashtags go though, I would maximize the use of as many as you possibly can, and I would rotate them as often as you can. If you're going to use the excuse that it's too much hard work to go and create a hashtag block, then Instagram might not be the place for you. Go and copy and paste blocks of 30 hashtags that are unique into a notepad editor on your phone. It will literally take you 5 minutes to create multiple blocks by using the recommended hashtags when you do. So if you do a search for, say, See Australia on Instagram, across the top of the results, you will see recommended hashtags. They are very similar types of hashtags that people have used in combination with See Australia. So they'll be Exploring Australia, Explore Australia, Australiagram, all those types of ones. Copy them out, put them into a block. Your work's done once, and next time you do a post, copy and paste that block of hashtags into your post. Next post you do, use a different block of hashtags, just copy and paste it out of there into your post. So it takes not long at all to go and create those blocks of hashtags, but the long-term benefit of doing so will be very much worth it. So
go to Tazigram's website and have a read of his article on social media. It's a good read, and I've read it and it's helped me out as well.
Yep, definitely. Look, we'll link to that in the episode notes for sure on that particular one. So
the other option for getting followers or getting noticed as well is pretty much travel the world and copy a well-known photographer's work.
Anybody who hasn't seen this one this week, there's been a bit of a blow up on some of the bigger photography blogs about a particular couple who've traveled the world and gone out of their way to duplicate two very, very well-known Instagrammers in Do You Travel and Gypsy Lust, to the point where the people in the photos have literally wearing the exact same clothing and have posed in the exact same way in many iconic locations around the world. Surely there's got to be better things to do with your time.
It's phenomenal though. This isn't just like going to their park and trying to create the same scene. This is around the world, the exact same spot, the exact same setup. They've even arranged pillows the same way. They've got the same tent. They've got the same food on a table. And
they've copied the captions,
the fashions, and everything, and
captions
as well. It's a lot of effort to go to to just take the same photo.
Surely there's got to be better ways to spend your money than going out and basically insta-stalking an account that you like. Like, isn't unique content a big part of photography and like unique experiences? I don't know. This is a really weird one to me. I'd be pretty worried if somebody did this to me.
I don't know whether I'd be worried or flattered. I mean, someone's going to the effort to do this. I don't know. Yeah, it's either creepy or really flattering. I think you'd think it's creepy. Yeah.
Creepy for me. When I saw this, my partner showed me because she follows Gypsy Lust and saw it on her story about how this is kind of been happening, and yeah, it's a little bit weird. I'm not really a liker of this. I'm sure there's better things to do with your time than go out and try to emulate other people's we're not just talking about one photo, we're talking about the entire account is just an entire emulation of these photographers.
Yeah, and not just going and trying to get their own composition, their own style. It's exact. They've almost like looked at the photo, changed things and said, all right, this is exact. No, you're wearing the wrong clothes, or you got to put that hat on, or move that pillow this way, or yeah, it's really weird.
Yes, no, for sure. And look, so moving on to some good news this week. So Canon Tales by Light, which is a documentary series, which was originally released on National Geographic. So it's a documentary series where the Canon have produced, where they've followed around some really well-known photographers, including Peter Eastway here in Australia. They went to Antarctica with him. A great little documentary series is now available on Netflix. Previously, it was only available on National Geographic, so on pay TV. So anybody who's got Netflix, probably a good opportunity to go and watch this. It's some incredible photography, some incredible scenery, and some amazing parts of the world. I think that could potentially inspire some people to get out and about and explore. So,
and it's through Canon as well, which is good.
Yeah, no, yep, yeah. If it was, yeah. All right, so we'll just leave that one there. But yeah, look, they're following Art Wolfe, Darren Dew, Richard Lanson, Peter Eastway, and Crystal Wright. So some very well-known photographers and filmmakers there that kind of specialise in their niches, whether it be underwater, landscape, those types of things, or documentary-style photography. So definitely worth going and having a look at this. It's a really cool series. So I think any photographers would kind of get some inspiration from the scenes that you see in this. Particularly, I really like the Antarctica one, so Peter Eastway. It's a really cool story. Really, really awesome scenes, and somewhere that I would love to go as well.
Well, I'm probably going to have to let you get packed for your overland trip.
Yes, I need to go and get packed. Apparently, I've still got to go and get some mosquito repellent. I've just been told there's quite a lot of mosquitoes up there at the moment.
And blister packs.
So, yep. And blister packs, and probably go and charge up all my batteries and everything else that I need to go and torture myself for the next week.
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank Nissi Australia again for supporting this episode and the show in general. We'll be giving away a 100mm V5 filter holder. We'll run our Instagram competition for the next week and a half or almost 2 weeks and announce the winner on the 27th of November at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time.
Yes, awesome. Yes, thank you again, Nissi, and we're sure we're going to get a lot of entrants into this one again. Keep them in, keep them rolling in, because the quality of images that we're actually looking at and seeing is just incredible.
If you want to go out and just get your own V5 filter holder or anything from Nissi, jump on their website nissifilters.com.au and use the coupon code Project RAWcast to get 5% off.
Cool, awesome. I'm going to go pack my bag, and I will see and speak to you next week, hopefully when I return from the overland track.
If you return.
If I return.
All right. Well, I'll catch you later then.
Cool. See you, mate.
Bye.
Bye.